I'm Gary, and this is Coasting with Culture, which is all about combining theme park visits and riding roller coasters with various cultural experiences around the world. The chance to return to Europe has come once again, and this time it's off to Italy. This adventure includes several of the country's biggest theme parks, a lot of shameless coaster stops, and some time in a few of the most popular cities to visit. Before diving into this adventure though, we'll take a look at how the trip came together, then make our way over on board a flight that offered a chance at redemption from a previously missed opportunity. Sometime after being disappointed that he had already ridden Alaska's only permanent roller coaster, my friend Rick shared with me a plan for a long multinational excursion across Europe with a quick hop to Africa at the end. The plan was to start in England for about a week, make a few quick stops in Spain and Poland, continue to Italy for the next week and a half, and then end with a couple days in Tunisia. While my return to Tours Northwest gave me a lot of flexibility, I did have to exercise some restraint for this itinerary because of other summer travel plans, and because I do need to work at some point during our busy season. So it effectively came down to choosing between the week in England, which would cover several parks that weren't a part of my previous 2 visits to the UK, or going to a country I had yet to visit in Italy. Ultimately, that lack of a previous visit is what led to choosing Italy, especially as it was pretty high on my list of countries to visit. I also joined for the couple of days in Tunisia since it was another country I hadn't been to yet, and because I was able to find a pretty sweet deal for the return home to Seattle. I'll discuss that a bit more when we get to the Tunisia portion of the trip, but it did influence how I made my way over to Europe. While the cash options to get to Milan weren't great, I did find a relatively cheap option that also allowed me to make up for missing out on an experience the year before. You may recall when several BuzzBar members descended upon Europe, I had originally booked a business class flight with Condor using my Alaska miles to get to Germany, but had to cancel it when I thought I wouldn't be able to make it. While I did eventually confirm I could go on this trip, the seat I originally booked with Condor was no longer available, and thus I found the deal with Air Canada to Paris instead. Thanks to having those miles still from that canceled flight, I did get another chance to try out Condor's business class on their Seattle to Frankfurt route, and then simply paid cash for the short hop from Frankfurt to Milan to get to this journey starting point. And it's time once again to start a new journey. Kicking off this trip would once again take advantage of the convenience of solid public transportation from West Seattle to get to the airport. The bummer about flying with Condor is that they don't give you the option to put in a known traveler number. You can use TSA PreCheck, but you actually have to go and get it entered in at the desk because they don't give you the option to do so ahead of time. A little bit of a bummer, especially because I gotta walk all the way to the other side of the airport. Luckily though, even with having to walk to the other end, they did have a dedicated business class line at the check-in desk. A nice quick fix, ready to rock and roll through PreCheck, and the line is nice and short. So this is definitely worth adding. While I was in that TSA line, I happened to spot the Condor plane landing from its Frankfurt departure, and so I wanted to see if I could watch it taxi to the terminal, and I knew just the place to do so. Back at good old Brewtop Social. Since it's part of the Priority Pass program, this could certainly become my go-to pre-flight stop here at SeaTac, if I happen to get to the airport early enough. And unlike the first time where it was dark, this sunny July day gave plenty of opportunities to see the various planes taking off and landing, while enjoying yet another flatbread pizza and half-lion log show blonde ale. But this particular plane watching session was a bit different, since I knew exactly which plane I was flying on, thanks in large part to its distinctive striped livery that has become a signature of Condor. When I made my way over to the South Satellite, there was still a bit of time before boarding, and the area around the gates were packed with summer travelers. So I decided to head up to the club at SEA, which appeared to have been relocated within the South Satellite since my previous visit before I flew to Hawaii in 2019. Back then you were practically at eye level with several of the planes outside, but now you're higher up and facing the maintenance hangars of Alaska and Delta. A bit of a bummer for plane watching, but the lounge certainly feels more fresh and modern. Getting onto this plane in particular, with registration DANRI, had an additional layer of fun because while I had breakfast that morning, I watched a vlog from Josh Cahill about his Condor experience, and it turned out that he filmed it on this exact same plane. So I was even more excited to get a chance to experience the newest variation of the A330 for myself. Before long, it was time to hop aboard that flying candy cane and head over to Germany. And getting to do so in their business class, thanks to my Alaska miles, would surely make it even better. After having my first arrival into Seattle from a different continent to end last year's England trip, this would be the first time I'd be heading directly to another continent from SeaTac, which meant it was a good time to start getting comfortable, since it would be about a 9.5-hour flight. As the plane took off to the north, the early evening sun to the west made it tricky to enjoy the sights of Seattle on the way out, but it was neat to see all the boats out on Lake Union for the 4th of July. And as we got closer to cruising altitude, it was time to recline the seat and take advantage of the included noise-canceling headphones to enjoy a movie or two from a pretty solid selection. Dinner service included a wide variety of appetizers, and for the main course I chose to try their beef cheek, which was tender and quite good. A fruit and cheese plate, along with a lemon tart for dessert, was a nice way to end this meal, which then led to the best part of getting to sit near the front of the plane, and the part that had me excited about flying on the new aircraft for Condor, their lie-flat seats. While I'll gladly fly economy if I have to choose between that and not getting somewhere, I certainly won't complain when I could take advantage of reward programs like Alaska's and have the opportunity to enjoy this experience. For now though, it's time to put on some relaxing music and try for a few hours of shut-eye. Unfortunately, this aircraft didn't have any adjustable air vents above the business class seats, so I ended up feeling pretty hot and sweaty for much of the night and had trouble really getting a good deep sleep because of it. But breakfast was pretty good, as it came with more fruit and a ham and cheese omelet. And before long, we were flying over the German countryside on our way into Frankfurt. That was definitely a much more pleasant experience riding something with the name Condor than the last time I did that in Europe. That being said though, I've successfully made it to Germany and now it's time to continue on to Italy. But that flight's not going to be for about 4 hours. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead down the pathway here because there are signs that say they have showers. And after being a bit of a hot, sweaty mess on that flight, I love one right now. So that was easily the best €6 I've spent so far. You know, that's something I wish more American airports would do, is just have showers, especially for folks who are arriving on those late night flights and those red eyes. And, you know, you've been sitting in the plane all day and you feel kind of grungy, or for folks who just got to the airport after spending an entire day somewhere, it's nice to get freshened up. While the lounges I'd be able to access with Priority Pass weren't available in the terminal for flights within the European Union, I loved Frankfurt's ease of viewing airplanes, especially the taxiway that ran right beside one of the terminal's halls for an up-close and personal view of some large aircraft from Lufthansa, including classic widebodies like the Boeing 747 or the Airbus A340. One 747 I was happy to see in particular was good old DABYP, Boeing's 1500th 747 ever built, making this now the third different continent I've seen it on, as it was in Buenos Aires during my South America trip, and in Chicago about 5 months later when I was connecting to Springfield, Missouri. Have you ever flown on this particular plane, or any Boeing 747 for that matter? Please feel free to share your experiences aboard the Queen of the Skies in the comments below. I'd especially love to know which airline and route it was for, if not on this specific plane. I also passed some of the time enjoying some German snacks including a pretzel, a bottle of Mezzo Mix, which is the popular combination of cola and orange soda, and one of my personal favorite varieties of Germany's Ritter Sport chocolates, the ones with the delightful crunch of cornflakes inside. Admittedly, it was a bit of a bummer to be getting on a much smaller Airbus A319 after watching a lot of the larger planes while in the terminal. But this would be a new airline to add to my list of those I've flown with, and this particular plane had some really adorable birds on the livery and wings. It was also a relatively empty flight, meaning I had a row all to myself. The long layover and evening departure from Frankfurt was a bit different than all my previous European trips, where I'd usually go right into exploring after landing with a transatlantic flight. So this flight I ended up dozing off a bit, but luckily I woke up just in time to enjoy the views of the Italian Alps below, which reminded me a lot of flying over the Cascades back home during the summer. There might be a good reason why the Northern Cascades are nicknamed the North American Alps. And with that, the flights for this part of this trip were complete. And the exploration of Italy got underway pretty quick, as the hallways between the arrival area and the train station had a pretty large art installation that on a quick glance doesn't seem that out of the ordinary for a nation that's known for its historic artists. But upon a closer look, these sculptures, created by artist Fabio Viale, had some interesting details added to them in the form of tattoos that look like what you might see on a variety of people today. Viale is known for blending mythology and Renaissance inspirations with elements of modern times, and this was a really fascinating way to present this blend. As much as I enjoyed the art and the easy access to the train, there was a bit of bad news that came.
Rick and Keith's flight out of Poland has been canceled, so they're not getting in tonight as originally planned. But they were able to get routed onto a relatively early flight tomorrow, arriving at 9 in the morning. So that means when I get to Milan, I'm gonna have some free time to explore this evening.
On the way into town, I'd need to make a transfer from the larger regional train to one of the more local lines. And after a few stops, it was just a short walk over to the Ibis Milano Central, where I'd be staying for the first couple nights. The room was a bit more basic, and the view outside wasn't the most glamorous, but it was a clean and comfortable room, and in an excellent location for a short evening stroll, especially because nearby was one of their historic trolley lines, which would come in handy later. And only a short couple blocks away was my first meal in Italy at a pizzeria bistro by the name of 101 Tarantella. Now, as someone who loves pizza, I wasn't going to turn down this chance to try one from a place in the nation that created it. And this restaurant had a lot of positive reviews, which it certainly earned because their pizza was excellent. I also found it really fascinating how there were many restaurants in Italy that offered German beers. So there would be quite a few of them during this trip when Italian options weren't offered, as I'm really not much of a wine drinker. I also had a moment of confusion when the server brought out a shot that I hadn't ordered, but that was when I learned about the Italian custom of having a drink of limoncello after a meal. I have to say, I quite enjoyed the taste of it. there's a gelato place down the street that is open until 1 a.m. and I feel like that might be a great way to cap off this first evening.
For this one, I decided to go with a combination of Oreo and Biscoff cookie, which were an absolute delight on this warm summer night. After getting back to the hotel, I decided to have one last beer before returning to my room, as the lobby bar offered Peroni on tap, and taking it easy in the lobby with said beer was a pleasant way to end this day, making my way to Italy. It was great having a more spacious seat up front in the plane to fly across the Atlantic, and I especially enjoyed getting to see all the older wide-body planes while waiting in Frankfurt, then ending this arrival day with a few tastes of Milan. But there was much more to see in Milan the following day, as well as the first Italian coasters to ride on this trip. Thank you for watching this video from Coasting with Culture. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and click on the subscribe button to see future videos here on YouTube, like these ones which you may enjoy as well. Additional content can be found at coastingwithculture.com, and you can also follow Coasting with Culture on various social media channels at CoastWCulture for announcements, previews, and updates. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care and safe travels.